arena is roaring. The camera locks onto his face. No smile, no shouting, just calm. The ball pounds against the hardwood, the final seconds ticking away, and he rises for the shot as if it were just another routine attempt in practice. No drama in his movement, no panic. The ball floats through the air. It hits the rim once, twice, 3 times, 4, and then it drops through the net. The entire arena explodes. He doesn't. Kawhi Leonard stands crouched in the corner, watching the ball until it fully disappears through the hoop. His teammates sprint toward him. Fans lose their minds. Commentators scream about one of the greatest moments in history. And him? He simply rises slowly. No theatrical gestures. No need to be the center of attention. Got 2 finals MVPs. A championship with 2 different teams. One of the most dominant playoff runs of the modern era. And yet you won't hear loud declarations about being the best. You won't find endless interviews about his greatness. You won't see emotions spilling onto the surface dot in the age of social media, where players build their brands with every word. He is almost invisible, quiet, distant, as if he exists outside the entire circus. Maybe that's why he feels different from other superstars. Maybe that's why he's so hard to read. Who is the man who doesn't speak, but decides series? And is it possible that he is the most misunderstood superstar of his generation? To understand that, we have to go back. Before the titles. Before the trophies dot to Riverside. California dot no bright spotlights. No elite basketball academies. Just an ordinary city and a family living a normal life. Kawhi grew up in modest conditions, where fame wasn't the focus, work was. His father owned a small car wash. He taught him simple things: discipline, respect, responsibility. Kawhi wasn't a loud kid. He wasn't the one seeking attention. He observed, absorbed the atmosphere, learned. Then came the moment that marked him for life. When he was 16, his father was shot and killed during a robbery at the family car wash. Sudden, brutal, no time to prepare. No chance to say goodbye. The next day, Kawhi had a game to play. And he played, not because he didn't feel pain, but because basketball was the only place where, for a moment, he could stop thinking. The only place where he had control. Something inside him closed off. Emotions sank deeper beneath the surface. The world around him grew quieter. From that moment on, he wasn't just a talented kid from Riverside. He was someone carrying pain silently. No complaints. No excuses. At King High School, he wasn't talked about as a future megastar. He wasn't a media sensation. There was no hype around him. He wasn't labeled generational talent. But every coach who saw him practice noticed one thing: he worked differently than the others. While other players chased highlights, he chased details. He defended the opponent's best player, rebounded every ball, worked on a jump shot that at the time wasn't reliable. Hours and hours of repetition, mechanics, rhythm, discipline. He wasn't the flashiest. He wasn't the loudest, but he was the most consistent. Gradually, his mentality took shape. No excuses. If someone overlooks you, work harder. If something doesn't work, improve it. You don't need to talk about what you can do. Show it. Even then, he felt different. Calmer, colder. As if he had built a wall around himself that very few could get through. And right there, at an unassuming high school in Riverside, the foundation was laid for the player who would one day silence entire arenas with a single shot, not with a scream, but with the silence that follows it. When the time came to choose a college, there was no chaos around his name. No televised announcements proclaiming the next generational talent. No comparisons to future legends. He was respected, but not celebrated. And that's how he ended up with the San Diego State Aztecs. For most players, it would have been a stop. For him, it was a workshop dot in college. He wasn't viewed as an elite NBA prospect. Scouts mostly talked about his physical tools, long arms, strength, the ability to defend multiple positions. But when the conversation turned to offense, doubts appeared. He doesn't have a consistent shot. He's too mechanical. He can't create his own shot. Instead of seeing limits, he saw a checklist. His game at San Diego State wasn't built on flair. It was built on energy, rebounding, defense, physicality. Every game felt personal. He didn't play to look good. He played to win. Slowly, he began to change. The shot became more precise. His off-ball movement grew smarter. He learned how to use his body attacking the rim. It wasn't a dramatic overnight leap. It was a process. Quiet, systematic, almost invisible, just like him. After 2 years came the 2011 NBA draft. He wasn't in the spotlight like the top picks. He wasn't the face of the night. He was selected 15th overall by the Indiana Pacers. For most players, that would have been a dream come true. But within minutes, everything changed. He was immediately traded to the San Antonio Spurs, a quiet player heading to the most disciplined organization of its era. Coincidence? More like a perfect match of character. There, he was met by a man obsessed with details, discipline, and team culture, Greg Popovich. Popovich wasn't looking for a star. He was looking for a player who would fit the system, a player who would accept a role, a player who would work without demanding immediate glory. Kawhi was exactly that type. San Antonio already had a culture built on humility and winning. In the locker room sat players who didn't need to prove their greatness. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. 3 champions, 3 personalities, and yet no inflated egos. For a young player, it was the ideal environment. He didn't arrive as a savior. He arrived as a role player. He guarded the opponent's best scorers, stood in the corner waiting for a pass, learned when to speak and when to stay silent. Mostly he stayed silent, but every year he improved. His shot got quicker, his decisions more confident. His self-belief grew, though you couldn't see it in his expression. The Spurs shaped him slowly, without pressure, without artificially manufacturing a star. Somewhere between relentless defense, precise team play, and endless practices, a transformation began. From a player seen as merely a defensive specialist, he was becoming something far more dangerous. A two-way force. A player who could silence the league's best scorers, and then decide the game himself. San Antonio didn't just give him a chance. It gave him identity. And the silence he carried from childhood turned into a weapon. The year 2013 was the first time he truly brushed the summit. The 2013 NBA Finals. On the other side stood the defending champions, the Miami Heat led by LeBron James. For most young players, it would have been too soon. Too big a stage, too big a name across from them. Kawhi was given a simple task: guard LeBron without no words, no fear. Game after game he stuck to him, using his long arms, leg strength, and patience. It wasn't about highlight blocks. It was about subtle disruptions, about making LeBron uncomfortable. And at times, it worked surprisingly well. The Spurs were seconds away from a championship. Game 6. A shot that should have ended it all. Then chaos. Ray Allen's 3. Overtime. Game 7. And the end for Kawhi. It was his first real taste of the finals, and his first great pain at the highest level. He didn't collapse. He stored it away. Another layer of motivation. Another reason to be better. A year later, they returned. The 2014 NBA Finals. Same opponent. Same stars. but a different Kawhi. He was no longer just a young player fulfilling defensive duties. He became more aggressive, took the ball, attacked. In Game 3 and Game 4, he looked like someone who understood it was time to take control. Miami had no answer. The Spurs played nearly perfect team basketball, but Kawhi became the symbol of that dominance on both ends of the floor. At 22 years old, he won Finals MVP. No grand speeches, no theatrical celebration, just a quiet smile and a trophy in his hands. That was when the nickname The Claw was born, the man with enormous hands who can grab a game and never let it go. After the championship, there was no stagnation. There was evolution. His offense began shifting from complementary to primary. The mid-range jumper became lethal, mechanical, repeatable, almost robotic. Every movement looked the same. No unnecessary dribbles. One bounce, stop, rise, clean release. His post-game grew stronger. He knew how to carve out position, use the strength in his shoulders, create space. He wasn't the fastest player on the floor, but he was one of the most efficient. He slowed the game down, forced defenders to play at his pace. And in clutch moments, he seemed almost unnaturally calm. No heavy breathing, no exaggerated gestures, just a decision. Now is the time. Gradually, he became one of the best two-way players in the entire league. He won Defensive Player of the Year twice. And meanwhile, his offensive numbers kept rising every season. Elite defense, elite scoring, a rare combination. Some began cautiously whispering comparisons to Michael Jordan. Not because he was a copy, but because of the style. Mid-range dominance, strong footwork, the ability to control a game without unnecessary emotion. And of course, those hands, massive palms that could strip the ball from a dribble like taking it from a practice cone. Off the court, Kawhi didn't change. Still minimal words, minimal expressions. But on the floor, he was no longer just a piece of the system. He was becoming its most dangerous weapon. The year 2017 was supposed to be his definitive entrance into the absolute elite. The 2017 NBA playoffs brought a matchup that symbolically felt like a transfer of power in the West. San Antonio Spurs versus Golden State Warriors. Against the team that had redefined modern basketball. Game 1. And Kawhi looked like the best player on the floor. The Spurs led by more than 20 points. He played aggressively, confidently, controlling the tempo. The Warriors had no answer. He wasn't just a defensive specialist anymore. He was a leader, a player dictating the series. Then came the moment that changed everything. On a pull-up jumper, he landed on Zaza Pachulia's foot. His ankle twisted. Pain. A fall. Silence. From that point on, the series was never the same. Without him, the Spurs lost their balance. The Warriors took control and won the series. And fans began asking the question that still lingers. What if he had stayed healthy? Could he have stopped the dynasty? Could he have won Finals MVP against the team that was supposed to be unbeatable? Maybe yes, maybe no. But for those few minutes in Game 1, he looked like the best player in the world. But the problem wasn't just the ankle. The following season brought something far more complicated. A chronic quadriceps injury. Pain without a clear solution. Rehab. Comebacks. Setbacks. And around it all, silence. The organization said one thing. His camp and doctors said another. Kawhi barely spoke. He didn't deny the speculation. Didn't explain the details. In the Spurs locker room, long a symbol of stability, tension began to surface. Was he ready to play? Wasn't he? Who was telling the truth? The trust that had grown between him and the organization over the years began to fracture. For a player who built everything on loyalty and respect, it was a defining moment. For the first time, His silence wasn't interpreted as humility, but as distance. And then came the shock. A trade. Toronto Raptors. The entire NBA was stunned. The player who was supposed to be the future of the Spurs was heading to Canada, outside the main American media spotlight. For many, it looked like exile. 1 year left on his contract. No guarantee he would stay. Toronto risked everything. Traded away their longtime star. Bet on a player who was injured and might not even want to. Remained out most experts believed it was just a temporary. Stopped before he moved to a bigger market. No one expected it. Championship. No one expected that this temporary chapter would rewrite the history of an entire franchise. And Kawhi? Again, no big words. He just changed jerseys and got to work. The 2019 playoffs weren't just good. They were historic. Kawhi Leonard entered the postseason as the quiet leader of a team many experts didn't fully trust. The Toronto Raptors were strong, but still a team without finals experience. And in the East stood opponents with bigger names, bigger egos, bigger expectations. The series against the Philadelphia 76ers was a war. Physical, slow, exhausting. Every game a fight for every inch of hardwood. Kawhi scored against almost any defense. Fadeaways over long arms. Mid-range shots from impossible angles. Contact finishes at the rim. In Game 7 came the moment that changed his career. That final possession. Tie game. The ball in his hands. One dribble to the right. A leap from the corner. A high arc. The ball hits the rim. Once. Twice. 3 times. 4. Time freezes. Kawhi crouches in the corner, watching the ball's path. No early celebration. Just waiting. Then the net. The only Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA history. A moment that became iconic in seconds. A photograph that circled the globe. Silence before the eruption. And him at the center of it all. Still the same, calm, focused. But his work wasn't finished. In the finals waited the Golden State Warriors. A dynasty. The team that had dominated the decade. Even without the injured Kevin Durant, they still had experience. Still had championship DNA. Kawhi played differently from most stars in the finals. He didn't chase numbers at any cost. He controlled the pace. When it was time to score, he scored. When it was time to slow the game, he slowed it. He knew when to take responsibility and when to give space to his teammates. Toronto played organized, disciplined basketball. But it had something it had never had before. Absolute calm in its leader. The Raptors won the series 4-2. Canada celebrated its first NBA title outside the United States. Kawhi won his second finals MVP with a second team. In a different conference. In a different system. This was no longer a Spurs system story. This was proof of greatness. And yet, there was no grand speech about building a dynasty. No emotional declaration to the city. Just a short, simple sentence that perfectly captured his mentality. Board man gets paid. Job done. And then another shock. Instead of defending the title, instead of staying with the organization that handed him the keys to the city, he left. No dramatic interviews. No long farewell. He chose the Los Angeles Clippers. Some didn't understand it. Why leave a championship team? Why join a franchise that had never won anything? The answer was simple: control over his own destiny. A return home to California. His own project. Silence. Decision. A new chapter. And once again, the story began with enormous expectations. When he signed with the Los Angeles Clippers, the league shook for the second time in a matter of weeks. It wasn't just his arrival. It was also the trade for Paul George. 2 stars on one team. 2 elite two-way players. A defensive nightmare for anyone. The expectations were immediate: championship or disappointment. The Clippers had never won an NBA title, never been a true dynasty. And now they had the player who had just taken down the Warriors and won Finals MVP. The mission was clear: bring a champion's mentality to an organization that had lacked it. But reality proved more complicated. The term load management started getting used more and more. Kawhi began sitting out regular season games. The team was preserving him. Fans were split. Some understood the long-term strategy. Others just wanted to see the star play. The media started questioning his availability. The 2019-20 season ended in the Orlando bubble, the 2020 NBA bubble. The Clippers were up 3-1 on the Denver Nuggets. They were one step from the conference finals. Then came the collapse. Denver won 3 straight. Game 7 ended in a quiet unraveling. Kawhi had one of the weakest games of his season. No dramatic emotional outburst, just silence and disappointment. For the first time in his career, doubts appeared about whether he could lead a team without the perfectly structured Spurs system or without the emotional high of Toronto. It was a hit to his reputation. A year later, the answer came: the 2021 playoffs. A series against the Dallas Mavericks and the young star Luka Doncic. It was brutal. Dallas led. The Clippers were under pressure. And Kawhi flipped the switch. His efficiency was historic. Over 60% from the field. Mid-range shots that didn't miss. Calm in every possession. No rushing, no panic, just systematically dismantling the defense. One of the most efficient playoff performances of the past few decades. The Clippers came back and won the series. It looked like the momentum was back. Then came the series against the Utah Jazz. And another fall. An ACL injury. Non-contact, no huge moment. Just a bad step. Season over. Dream over. Again the question: what if? The Clippers still reached the conference finals without him. But it was clear: without a healthy Kawhi, they didn't have the final gear. And that became the defining theme of his era in Los Angeles. Potential always, conditional on health. The following years were about rehab, ACL, return, then a meniscus issue, another absence, a limited number of games. Every season began with the same question: how many will he play this year? Fans were frustrated. Some questioned his durability. Others defended the reality that chronic injury isn't a matter of willpower. The media speculated. Every update was dissected in detail. And Kawhi, the same silence. No explanations. No emotional reactions. Just work behind the scenes. Rehab, training, trying to get back to the level where he looked like the best player on the planet. At this point, his career split into 2 versions: the healthy one that's terrifyingly dominant, and the one watching games in street clothes. And between those 2 versions sits the biggest what if of his generation. On the surface, he seems cold, emotionless, unreactive, with no need to prove anything. Over the years, Kawhi Leonard earned the nickname Robot, not because he has no feelings, but because his emotional control is almost absolute. He doesn't smile after wins. He doesn't get rattled by trash talk. He doesn't need to roar at the crowd. He doesn't need to demand respect. In an era where image is nearly as important as performance, he's the anti-superstar. He doesn't write long posts. He doesn't wage media wars. He doesn't need validation. His identity isn't built on how loudly he speaks, but on how precisely he plays. His mindset is simple: work, detail, efficiency. Every movement has purpose. Every workout is an investment. When he's healthy, he doesn't look like someone playing basketball for show. He looks like someone solving an equation. Step, stop, rise, shoot, repeat. His playing style fits that perfectly. A mid-range assassin. In a league that shifted toward threes and layups, he stayed loyal to the space in between. One dribble into rhythm. Pull up from the right elbow. Fade away from the baseline. Defenders know what's coming and still can't stop it. His hands are legendary. Huge palms that give him control over the ball and over opponents. He steals passes other players don't even see. He can literally palm the ball with one hand and change his finishing angle midair. On defense, he's patient. He doesn't chase highlight blocks. He waits for the mistake, reads the opponent's hips, times the moment the ball lifts off the dribble, and it's gone. And above all, he controls tempo. He never hurries, never gets pulled into chaos. He slows the game to his pace, forces opponents to play to his rhythm. That's why he looks even stronger in the playoffs. When the game slows down, his efficiency climbs even higher. And that leads to the biggest question of his entire career. What if he were always healthy? What if, in 2017 against the Golden State Warriors, he stayed on the floor? In Game 1, he looked like the best player on the planet. Could that series have changed the direction of an entire era? What if, in 2021, he didn't go down with an ACL injury, just as the Los Angeles Clippers finally found their rhythm? Could they have gone all the way? How many titles could he have? 3? 4? More? His career is a strange mix of certainty and question marks. When he's healthy, he's almost unstoppable. Historically efficient, dominant on both ends. But health became the biggest opponent of his greatness. And that's why Kawhi Leonard may be the greatest. What if of the modern NBA, not because of talent, but because of time, his body wouldn't let him fully use when people talk about his legacy today? The debate is unusual. Kawhi Leonard has 2 finals MVPs, and not with one super team. He won with the San Antonio Spurs as a young player alongside veterans, and then with the Toronto Raptors as the leader of a team that had never won a title before. That isn't luck. That's adaptability. Proof he can be part of a system. And also it's center, and yet you rarely hear him discussed as the face of the league. He was never the NBA's marketing symbol. He doesn't sell a story with his voice. He doesn't stir controversy. He doesn't drive public debates. In an era where stars are built off the court as much as on it, his greatness is almost purely basketball, and that creates a strange contrast. A quiet legend, against marketing icons, when people talk about the greatest players of the era. His name sometimes comes up only after a pause. Maybe because he doesn't play enough games. Maybe because his career doesn't have those media-friendly dramatic arcs, full of quotes and conflict. His story is quieter, and maybe because of that, less appreciated. Is he underrated? Statistically, someone can point to the lack of a regular season MVP. They can point to games played, to the seasons he missed. But the playoffs are a different world. When April and May arrive, his game changes. The pace slows, defenses tighten, and that's exactly when his style starts to dominate. Efficiency rises, calm grows. In big moments, he doesn't look like a player under pressure. He looks like a player creating pressure. The respect among players is massive. Even the greatest scorers know you play differently against him. That his hands can change a possession at any time. That his mid-range is nearly automatic. Maybe he doesn't have the biggest media hype, but he has the kind of respect you only earn through performance. And then we return to that image. Game 7. 4 bounces of the ball. He's sitting in the corner, watching, waiting. No premature celebration. Just focus. Maybe he'll never be the loudest. Maybe he'll never be the most visible. But when he's healthy, he's the most dangerous.
He's right there.
Yeah, the glasses, there you go.
Leave a like, subscribe, and write in the comments the story you want to hear next. See you at the next video.